Alright, so in this video I'll be covering functions with explicit parameter names, Variadic parameters, and default values for your parameters. So let's go ahead and get started. So a function with explicit parameter names. Now, if you've noticed in our prior examples where I've covered parameters, like for example, here, where I have a perimeter of a rectangle, you notice that when the parameter appears, the first parameter's name does not appear. And that's pretty typical of functions. But the second one does. So in this case, it kind of makes sense, but it's not really clear. Like if someone was going to be using this function, or like when they would see that it requires two values, they would understand, okay, perimeter of length, width, that makes sense, but what's this first one? So let's work with a function where we give it really explicit names that appear when we use the function. So for my first example, I'm going to use, let's say, dividing two numbers. So we're going to do some division. So divide two numbers. Okay, so the first number is going to be the numerator, and we're going to make this a double. The second one is, of course, the denominator. We are also going to make this a double, right? And we're going to actually have a return value where it returns a double. Okay, we do our curly brackets. Alright, so we do return, and do numerator by denominator. Okay, so when we use this, so you see, it shows, okay, divide two numbers, num, double, den, double. Now, I don't know about you, but that's not extremely clear. Like, if I was going to use this, I would assume, okay, what's num stand for? What's den stand for? So, with division, you want to ensure that, the numerator and the denominator are set, because unlike multiplication and addition, the number and the placement is important. Otherwise, you're going to get a wacky result, right? So we're going to do 5 and 2. Now, that works. It does the job, but it's not extremely clear. One way we can make this clear is we can have explicit parameter names. So instead of this just being num, or in this case, when we use it, it doesn't even show up, we can actually give it a name. So we're going to call this numerator, and we're going to call the second one, of course, denominator. We spell it out. We will spell it out. Okay, so let's delete this, because this no longer applies. And then when we use this function again, you'll notice that when we enter it in, it types out numerator and denominator, what we named it. So we actually changed the external names to be something a lot clearer, a lot easier, it's more user-friendly. So 5, 2. And it still behaves exactly the same way. We just made it a lot clearer. Alright, so say, for example, you don't need the names. So let's say if we have a function where we add two numbers, right? We have a num, which is going to be the first number. We're just going to do integers at this point. We have bnum, also going to be an integer. Obviously, I can't seem to spell it correctly. And this is going to also return a value through curly brackets, return anum plus bnum. Okay. So, I mean, as we know with addition, we don't really need to, have order to whatever number comes first or second. Unlike division, there's order of operations. So here we can add whatever numbers we want in any order, right? And if you see here that anum doesn't even have an external name, which is true, but bnum does. But why have bnum, available and visible when you don't really need it? Because we already know this function is going to add 2 numbers up, so we just have to give it 2 numbers. So how do we omit it? I can't talk right now, it's a little late, sorry. We use the underscore. Okay, so omitting external names, use underscore. Okay, and when we use this again, so since we've changed it, you see that we actually don't have any external names. So we can just do 2, 5. Wow, we have no external names. So it's pretty nifty. Okay, so the next thing we're going to cover is Variadic parameters. Now, Variadic parameters basically accepts 0 or more values of a particular value type, and these values are passed into the Variadic parameter and are made available within the function's body as an array of the same type. So, therefore, a Variadic parameter is an array of numbers in quotes, that basically you can cycle through. All right, so let's have fun with that, and you'll see what I mean when I go through it. So for example, let's stick with the math theme. Let's say we want to calculate the mean given a set of numbers. All right, so what we do is let's go ahead and create our parameter, which is going to be a set of numbers, right? And this is going to be of type double. And how we determine whether a parameter is a Variadic parameter is we add 3 periods after the type. So 1, 2, 3. I'll close the parentheses. Let's add a space here so it makes it clear. And our curly brackets. Okay, so basically this accepts a parameter that can accept 0 or many values. Okay, actually I'm going to do a return type here too, so that it's a little bit clearer. It's going to be of double as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a variable and call this total. This is going to be a double, and we're going to set it to 0. Now, if you remember, Swift likes to infer type. If I had just put var total equals 0, it would assume that it would be an integer. So that's why I'm actually specifying that this particular variable is a double. Okay, and so now what we need to do is we need to cycle through how many values are going to be passed into this function. It could be 0, it could be 100, you don't know. So we're going to use a for in loop. So for number in our numbers parameter, we are going to do some math. So what is the math? Well, we're going to do total plus equals number. So, when calculating the mean, we need to add all the numbers together, right? And then we need to divide all the totals of all the numbers by the number or the count of every number that comes in. So if we have 5 numbers, we're going to divide by 5, right? So we're going to do return total, and then we're going to do division, and we're actually going to cast double. We're going to change the type of the numbers count to a double, because if I remember correctly, numbers is an int, I'm almost certain of that. Yes. Anyways, we need to cast it as a double in order to divide it into total, because total is of type double. Okay, so there we go. We have that. So let's work with this. Let's see if we can calculate the mean. So if I can spell, gosh, calculate the mean, and then we'll just add some numbers. So let's do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. And we get 4, which is actually correct. As you see, I'm going to take a look. It actually does the math. It goes 4 times. And yep, it does equal 4. Okay, so that's how you use Variadic parameter. And, you know, say if I just wanted to do 2, right? 1.5, that is absolutely true. So you see it took, you know, how many numbers? 7 numbers. And say if I just wanted to do 1, it will take 1. Sure enough, 1. And if I did 0, oh, can't do it. Well, you know, it can't calculate it because there's nothing to calculate, right? All right, so that is Variadic parameters. All right, so the next thing I'm going to cover is default values for functions, parameter functions. So say, for example, you have a function where you have a parameter that, you know, may or may not have a value, but you want to set it to a default. It's actually pretty easy to do so. So let's go ahead and keep with our math theme here. Let's do a function called division. Oh, I don't think I've used that. I haven't used it yet. Okay, great. So I'm actually going to copy one I did up here because I'm lazy. And it's already really nicely typed out. Why waste time typing it out again? Okay, so here I have my original function that I used above, right? Actually, I'm not going to return double. I'm going to actually return a string because I want this to output pretty. I want it to be pretty. Okay, so I have my numerator, I have my denominator, and I actually want another parameter which will take a sign. And this sign is actually going to, you know, depend on, you know, whether they want to use backslash or it's actually going to default to, you know, the typical division sign that we use, which is the bar with the 2 dots, right? So how do I assign that? Well, I do my name, so my explicit name here, the actual name that we use inside the function, I specify its type because it's type string, and then I equal it to what the string is. So that is the default. And you'll see what I mean once I finish the rest of this. So I'm going to do return, and this is going to return a string where it's going to be, it's going to actually output what the numerator is, you know, what value we entered for the numerator, and then it's going to output the sign that is right now it's default, right? Okay, and then we're going to do our denominator, and then we're going to have equals, and then we're going to have what this equals. So we're going to do numerator divided by denominator. So we're actually going to do the math inside the return. Okay, so let's see how this looks. So we have a division, and you see here we have numerator double denominator, which means we can use this and depend on the function to use the default that we set here for the string, which is totally fine. We can totally do that. Okay. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's see how it looks. So I'm going to do 9 divided by 3. Okay. And here we go. We have our little output here. I'm actually going to go ahead and pop it in here so we can see it. Okay, so we actually have our default sign that appears. Now let's see if we don't want to use the default sign. I mean, we don't have to, right? So you see here we have the option of using the 3-parameter version of our function. So let's go ahead and use that. Oops. So let's go ahead and use that. Alright, so again, let's do 10 divided by 2, and let's say the sign we want to use is the backslash. Okay, and sure enough, here we go. We replaced the default sign to our backslash that we wanted to use. So that's how you set up default values for our parameter functions. Okay, so this video we have covered quite a bit. We've covered explicit parameter names, how to make them more readable. We've learned how to omit them if we don't want them to even show up. And then we've had some fun with Variadic parameters. One thing I want to mention before I forget with Variadic parameters is that a function can only have one Variadic parameter at one time. So just FYI, I forgot to mention that. A function can only have one Variadic parameter at a time. Okay, so I want to make sure you are aware of that. It can only have one at a time. It can't have 2 or 3 or 10. It can only have one. So just, yeah, I forgot to mention that. Okay, and then we cover default values for our function parameters. And yeah, so there you go.